This time we will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. I don't know if there's any additions or deletions to the agenda. One correction, agenda item number 4D. The date of that event is October 5th rather than September 28th as listed. October 5th. And if it meets with the council's approval, I would like to move agenda item number 7 forward in the agenda immediately after agenda item number 1. Okay. Okay, we'll operate under that slightly revised agenda. The first item then would be to consider the approval of the minutes of the July 7th regular council meeting. The council does have those minutes printed. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I would have one request for a change on the backside of page 14, where it talks about the sale of city property to KHC Construction. After talking to that company owner, he would prefer to hold title in his personal name. So if we could have that, the city-owned sale to Kim Christensen personally instead of the construction company, I would appreciate it.
Any objection to that? Okay, we'll note that correction.
Thank you.
Any other issues with the minutes as they are printed?
Move to approve of the corrections that were put in.
Second? Motion by Larry, second by Mike. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We'll now then move to agenda item number 7. This is the swearing in of David Ingle as a police officer for the city of Marshall. And I'll ask Tom Milbrook to come forward to administer the oath of office, as well as
David, you want to face me and raise your right hand? And repeat after me. I
David Engel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Minnesota
and the laws of the state of Minnesota
and of the United States,
and of the United States,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of police officer
the duties of the office of police officer
of the city of Marshall.
of the city of Marshall.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
congratulations and welcome to the city. I know you have a number of family that are here. We're happy that they're able to support you in this.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move then to agenda item number 2. This would be consider the award of bids for chemical feed improvement project at the wastewater treatment facility.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see the action recommendation for the award of bids to the Robert L. Carr Company for the low responsible bid of $333,600. That's for a chemical feed system for the taking phosphorus out of the waste stream. Bob Moore is here if you have any specific questions concerning the project and how it works. Bob, any comments?
No comments, no questions.
Any questions that the council has?
You can see that there's also an alternate that was bid that we recommended also for, I think it'll match the existing building out at the, out by the high school. a lot better than the fiberglass building that was there. And there's actually a deduct for that alternate.
Very good. If there's no questions that the council has, I would entertain a motion. Move to approve. Motion by Larry, seconded by Charlie to approve the award of bids as recommended. Discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 3 is public hearing on the request of R&G Construction Company for conditional use permits to construct two-family dwellings at 1500 and 1501 Ellis Avenue, 1102 Windstar Street, 1500 Quartzsite Circle, and 1500 to 1509 Diamond Drive. I'll call on Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works, and the engineer to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a little bit different than most conditional use hearings that you've heard. In that, in this case, you're actually conducting the public hearing for the project. Generally, this process would be taken care of by the Planning Commission and the recommendation given to you. But because of the fact that we had 2 meetings and we didn't have a quorum, this process is being brought directly to the City Council for this procedure. So we want to make sure that, I know that in the past you always handle your public hearings on these things and there may or may not be some input, but in this case, this is the entire amount of the hearing that we're having. This property that we're talking about this is the location of the 14 lots being requested. This is the proposed Windstar Street area, ultimately to connect it from Highway 59. Ellis Avenue will ultimately connect down to Windstar Street in the subdivision, and then also ultimately to Saratoga, South Saratoga Street, south of Trunk Highway 23. But these are the residential lots that we're talking about. They're in an R1, one-family residence district, and the proposal is to have a conditional use for 2-family residence districts. I do have, that's the general location map. I do have another map here that shows each individual one. Maybe I can bring it up so I can see the bullet points. It's a little confusing. Let me take it out this way. In the review by staff of the recommendations for the conditional use, you can see that there are 6 conditions that we're recommending for this. And if you remember, we had a similar request for this in the Carr Subdivision 1 area, which was immediately adjacent to a previously developed residential area. And you had quite a few comments about this concept. In this case, there are no residential areas immediately adjacent other than this 5-acre parcel. Craig Holland is the owner of this piece. And then this is the piece of property the city just acquired for the extension of Windstar Street. And then there are no immediately adjacent residential properties to the north or west of this site. However, there are some concerns and some issues that we want to bring forward with something like this, and I need to read these into the record. All dwellings constructed for split ownership must comply with the regulations for 2-family dwellings under split ownership listed in the certain section of the city code. The reason for that is because a lot of times you might have one owner for both dwellings, but most of the time those 2 dwellings may be sold and individually owned. So we want to make sure that the building code and the construction allows for them to be individually owned. Number 2, a boundary survey for each dwelling with split ownership shall be prepared by a Minnesota registered land surveyor and shall be filed with the Office of the Director of Public Works before the building official can issue a certificate of occupancy. The reason for that is sometimes you'll have a split ownership and you may think you know where you're going to put that building on the property, and you split that lot in accordance with the plan. then when the contractor gets out there, maybe they move that building a foot. Doesn't look like much, but when the wall moves a foot and the property ownership is a foot over, you don't want to be owning the pictures on the other wall inside the neighbor's piece of property. So the important part is to get that line exactly on that wall, inside that dwelling, and that's what that's for. Number 3, each dwelling unit will be a one-family use occupied by persons related by blood, marriage, adoption, or by not more than 3 unrelated persons. That issue came forward also in the rental ideas, when you buy one, rent one, buy it all, rent them both, that it could be a lot of people living in there renting. And so that was put in similar to what we had in some other single-family residential neighborhoods, where we did limit the occupancy for rentals in those neighborhoods. Number 4, 1102 Windstar Street shall be limited to one driveway access with a maximum width of 24 feet at the property line. The reason for this is 1102 Windstar Street. And Windstar Street is a minor collector street as designated by our municipal state aid system. And what we don't want to do is have multiple driveways entering onto these major streets. That's why you'll see in all of our subdivisions like this, yes, sometimes we can't preclude all driveway accesses other than the main streets coming into that street. There can be some of these leftover lots in between those areas, and so we want to minimize that whenever possible. And that's what we've done with this recommendation. Number 5, no driveway access is permitted onto Windstar Street from any other lot than 1102 Windstar Street. And that's for the same reason. For instance, all of these corner lots, the access for those lots must be onto Ellis Avenue, Quartzsite Circle, and Diamond Drive. No driveways onto Windstar Street from those corner lots. Number 6, the last one we're recommending, each unit within the dwelling must have an A or B address suffix in sequence with the order of the street addresses. The reason for that is, of course, that we don't want to have individual addresses on each lot. Let's say this one would be 1102, and this one might be 1501A and 1501B, okay, going this direction. It depends upon which direction the addresses come on. But this one, for instance, is 1500, 1502, 1504, 1506, going around. This one, if it was a multi-dwelling, would be 1500A, 1500B. So it keeps the addressing in accordance with our direction. That is really all. We are recommending the approval of the request with those 6 items. The developer representative is here tonight, and I would take any questions, ask for any input that they might have, or anyone from the public.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Questions the council has? Charlie?
What are the sizes of those lots?
Size of these lots, for instance, this one is about 100. Let me look on this map. I can't read on this one either.
Rick, you
Very small, I believe, on the street side. That northeast one, that's quite large. I think it's about 120. I think the other ones, as you go south there, I think they're about 100 on the frontage of the roads. I think they're about 140, 50 deep, I believe. Off the top of my head, I don't have a better plan than that with me.
Same restrictions to setbacks as any single-family home would be on that lot. It would be a 0 lot line, of course, within you, but same corner restrictions here on the major thoroughfare. It's probably a larger setback from this side than this side. But same setbacks as a single-family home.
What is the city's ordinance on frontage, for the smallest frontage you can have per lot in the city of Marshall?
I don't remember, Charlie, if it was 65 or 70 feet.
I believe it's 65, counted frontage.
Frontage, 65 or 70.
Usually wind up being 50-foot frontages for each half mile.
Each half.
But a common driveway.
In a common driveway.
Other questions that the council has? Go ahead. For the public hearing, developers representative, do you have any?
I don't have any comments on it.
Anyone else here as part of the public hearing that wants to raise a question?
I don't have a question, I just kind of have a comment. I personally don't think the city needs to have developments with cul-de-sacs in it, and I've stated that before because of the increased expense it is to the city. And now we are surrounding most of this cul-de-sac with multifamily dwellings, which, so therefore it seems illogical that that street would remain a cul-de-sac.
Maybe a comment there, it's more of a design question. These lots are all intended to face Diamond Drive. Even though these could really access the Quartzsite Circle, this is a drainage easement that goes down the front of these lots. And Rick, maybe a comment on what you would intend for that development along that circle.
Well, like Glenn just said, they didn't want us to have access and driveways to Windstar. That circle was not in there in our initial drawing. But to accommodate Windstar and the traffic, we didn't have access. We had no way of taking care of the one lot. I don't know what the address is, 1102 Windstar, it looks like from here possibly, but that's the only one that we could not accommodate. If we didn't have a circle there, we would have basically 3-4 lots in there that would have direct access to Windstar, being a hazard. That is exactly why that circle is in that design.
Maybe another comment on that too. We have discussed with all the developers that come in the minimization of cul-de-sacs. Even though cul-de-sacs probably end up being the higher priced lot sales in the subdivision. We discussed the issues we have with cul-de-sacs, snow removal, maintenance of the long term. So everywhere that we were able to, we try to put in U-shaped drives that actually start on the street and come around and come back into the street as well. In this case, it didn't work out, but in some other cases, we've identified those. But that's more kind of the subdivision plat kind of discussion that we've been having with the developers.
It just seems with the increased traffic that it would cause a safety hazard for the single-family dwellings.
But there's only 3 single-family lots that would actually exit out to that circle.
Actually, this one comes on the Windstar Quartzsite, this one, do you want to give us kind of your definition of where you see these fronting? You see these fronting
I
diamond?
see them fronting the Diamond Drive myself.
With this easement going down the back
Yes,
for
that would be
drainage.
preferably, if I was building there, that would be my backyard, because that's a walkway and a bike path in the backyard there. That would be, it's also part of the easement, but that's a walk path, bike path that goes throughout the whole development in the future.
I like what the developer is planning here in the sense, how many times have we had subdivisions that are all R1 and houses get built and then someone tries to rezone for multiple dwelling and so forth, which does not go over well with the neighbors. Anyone seeing this is going to probably be the first part of it developed. There can be no one that buys a lot in there that doesn't know what's conveyed in that area. And I appreciate, I think that's a good move.
That's why there's nobody here.
With that said though, just because that's R2, that doesn't mean that's gonna happen. I mean, that's just a use, and we did try to think ahead with that a little bit.
That's my question. You guys are making these available, but you guys haven't got plans to put those in place right now.
I actually have plans, but right now, there's nothing sold or anything in development, not to that point.
And you don't have any adjoining lots of that, that are in the R1 configuration retailed at this point?
No.
Anything that's north of, what is it, Slade Street? You don't have anything sold?
I have nothing sold. I'm not to that point, no.
Okay.
Then your, Glenn was saying it's gonna have just a single driveway or a driveway in common. That's the picture you have of these houses.
Our designs right now are common
So
driveways,
they're gonna be divided by the garages.
centered garages, so you get separation. The common party wall in the middle is part of the garage, keeps the separation.
Any other questions either from the council or the audience or the public? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Charlie, second by Mike. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. I'll now entertain a motion on the request for this change in zoning.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make the move to approve the request on the condition that the 6 requirements as stated in page 3-1 are addressed.
Motion by Larry, second by Charlie. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 4 is the consent agenda. We have 5 items for consideration on the consent agenda this evening. First is a transient merchant license for Kylie's and Kira doing business as Kylie's Books. Secondly, we have a temporary out-sale liquor license for SMSU Foundation for September 6th, 26th, 27th, and October 25th to 26th of this year. Third is a temporary on-sale beer license for the VFW 742 for the month of August this year. Fourth is the application for an exempt permit for the SMSU Foundation for an event on October 5th, 2008. And then finally are the bills and the project payments, and then for the building permits are there for information purposes. They have been previously approved by city staff. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for purposes of separate discussion? Dennis?
Yeah, I'd like to note that the applicant on 4A, that Kylie Stampera, is present, and I believe she would like to address this issue.
Okay, so let's remove 4A from the consent agenda. Any-
Or E also,
4E?
bills.
Okay. Leaves us with B, C, and D. Motion by Mike, seconded by Charlie to approve consent agenda items B, C, and D. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Dennis, I'll turn to you for agenda item number 4A.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my understanding that there's been a request from a Kylie Stampera for a transient merchant license. She appeared in my office and talked to me a little bit about the cost of the license, about what she is trying to do. And I've advised her, it might be a good idea for her to come here tonight to talk to the council about the costs. And it's been my understanding after talking to Mr. Melbrook that this council has not been in the habit of waiving those fees or prorating those fees. But I believe she would like the opportunity to talk to you about those fees.
Okay. Kelly, you can come forward and, yeah.
Okay. Okay, my name is Kylie Stampera, as it said. Basically what I'm doing is I'm a college student out here in Minnesota for the summer. I'm working right now in Redwood County, but I'm basically finishing up and definitely going to work for this one. I did a really awesome job. But what I'm doing is I'm an independent contractor for the Southwestern Company, which is a publishing company, and they publish educational books for children, just starting with infants all the way up to the first couple of years of college. So definitely, it's been around for 150 years, so they must be doing something right that people like to keep on publishing. But basically, the reason I went into this internship is that I'm trying to finance my own college. I'm from Colorado, but I go to school in Oregon, so out-of-state tuition is a little bit costly. I don't know if you have college kids, or I'm sure you've put some kids through college, or kind of heard it's expensive. So the idea is that I just, so my parents don't have to pay for it, I'm going to finance it myself. So this seems like an awesome opportunity to do that. And though I am working for a company, I am an independent contractor, therefore I'm in charge of all of my fees. So $315 for the fees, like I definitely understand there should be a cost for a permit since I am in the business. But if there was a possible way to have it lowered, just because $300 could buy me, like a semester worth of books at college, and sometimes even more, which is definitely expensive there. And then also, I know there was a 30-day wait that they had mentioned, and I'm only going to be here for about a month more. So if I waited, I'd kind of miss out on my chances of actually being able to see me here. So I don't know if that's something that would be possible to...
And I think that the 30-day wait issue has been addressed.
Okay.
It may have taken up to 30 days. We have to do a background check, but that background check has all been completed. So there is no waiting period. It's just up to the council to approve that. So the 30-day wait is off the table.
Okay, cool.
The issue is...
Wasn't sure. But I know that was the first note. But yeah, so I guess that my basic concern was just with the fee. I don't know if there's any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for
So
Carmen?
how do you sell these? Do you have a storefront? Do you go door to door?
So it's door to door, so I carry my little green bag. I could have brought it, but I have some, looks like Nestle Trade kind of books that I do. But what it is I go to the neighborhood and I get referrals basically. So I talk to families, and then I find out where I can find families where they're just little kids all up to high school. That way I don't have to bug the folks where they have empty nests, so I'm not bugging them. So it's definitely something for 150 years that college students, there's actually 4,000 students in the United States doing this program, kind of an exchange program. Maybe the kids from Minnesota University. I'm not sure, I think we're down south this year is what I heard, but.
Dennis, how is this different from like home party books? They have like Dorling Kinsley, and where they have home parties and they have a consultant. I mean, they don't apply for a license. Why is...
Maybe because, there's nobody local sponsoring her or supporting her like there are with the local book.
I think that's the primary item is that with the transient merchant is basically like it says, it's a transient person and business established here locally that comes in to the community, does what they come here for, and then they leave. Whereas I think what you're talking about is there's local people that probably go to homes and have some parties and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the difference comes in on that.
There are some book sales though, like I know of two of the places that I do business with have somebody that comes from out of town, drops off a bunch of books, leaves an order form, and there he comes back, a week later, 2 weeks later, at a given time, drops off the books that's been ordered, picks up those books, and comes back 2 weeks later and puts out more books. Basically doing the same thing. He's from out of town. He's just
But he's
stopping
running
in a
through
local-
somebody in town.
He's just stopping in a local business and dropping them off in the lunchrooms.
The local business, usually what goes on to a local business, we don't usually work with those. It's kind of what the business wants to do through their own business. Left with that.
Tom, you have anything you want to add to this?
The company that she works with, Southwestern, is the company that has been applied for a transient merchant many years, and contrary to what she's asking for, we have never had anyone come forward and ask for the
question, I guess, it's a comment. I understand where you're coming from and the reason for your request. However, as was indicated, we've never prorated them in the past, and we have transient merchants that come in for one day. The tool sale. In for one day, gone, and that's it for the entire year. And we've never prorated, so I think we got a problem trying to prorate.
Well, the council will probably have some discussion here, so you can go ahead and sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion the council wants to have?
My concern would be, like, basically, kind of agree with Mr. Bodenheimer, that if we do this, we set precedents for everything else that comes up. So I would be in the mood to deny, and I make that a motion.
Can I clarify your motion? Your motion would be to allow the transient merchant license for Kylie and not allow the request for the waiver.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Mike. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And then agenda item number 4E is the bills in front.
Yes, Tom, this first page of the bills, we rented a trailer for $450. Why would the city need to rent a trailer?
That was for the Community Services Department, and I guess I did not question them why they were renting that.
I mean, surely, I've seen enough trailers owned by the city around, floating around, and I can't believe that they could not have borrowed one for it. Obviously, $450, I hope it was for more than one day, but,
I believe it's for the summer months.
okay. That's a little easier, okay. That's all.
Okay, any other questions on the bills? Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mike, seconded by Mike to allow the bills. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 5 is consider the adoption of the ordinance amending the salaries and compensation of the mayor and council members. This was introduced at the last regular council meeting. The action here is first off, the introduction was a result of the charter requirement that we discussed at the first meeting, the regular meeting in July. The action here would be to either, there's a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. If that would pass, it would be adopted. If it would not pass, the salaries and compensation would remain the same. If there is not a motion and a second, the issue would not go forward and salary compensation would remain the same. Questions?
No questions, but I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the ordinance, considering we did not do it last year. So this 3% raise is really 1.5% each of the years. If the city cannot afford that, we're in deep trouble. Comes to $1,100 a year.
Motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Larry. Discussion?
I've got one thing to discuss, and I brought it up last year, and we'll bring it up again this year, and probably every year that I sit here, I'll bring up the same discussion, is they give us these fact sheets from the League of Minnesota Cities that are supposed to be some kind of scientific thing that shows you what you need to know. But what a bunch of biased information, because you pick 13 cities, and last year I made a request, special request, to come forward with the cities between populations of 10,000, 15,000, include all the cities in Minnesota. And when the results came out, they're a lot different than the ones we got listed here, the cities that we got picked out. So you can go through and hand pick whatever cities you want and make this thing look any way you want. And I would really appreciate when they bring information forward, that be as scientific as possible, because, you know something? This stuff here just means nothing. You just will not have pages in the book. It's not gonna be scientific. And scientific is including everything within that group that would be affected by that group. And that would be the cities between, instead of going from 10,000 to 25,000, and pick 13 cities, let's go from 10 to 15,000, include all the cities in Minnesota, and get an honest look at what's going on there, because we don't have an honest look at what we've got right here. That's it. One more comment.
Other discussion? Not call for a vote on the motion. On the table, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we'll have a division of the House. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed? And today you have the vote, motion passes. Agenda item number 6, consider the addendum to the private redevelopment contract. Mark Hanson is with us this evening. This action is for information purposes only, because this is an upcoming action that would be considered by the HRA.
Correct, and also the action is involved with the EDA, multiple properties that are being owned by the Economic Development Authority. Prior to tonight's meeting, we had brought forward a contract for redevelopment of the junior high site at Southwest Municipal Housing Partnership. Two issues were brought up to look at possible addendum. One issue was brought up at the fact of selling a portion of the property which was in the parking lot, and we're looking at making a change to allowing that sale of the entire parcel of property, since we were looking at reimbursing the housing partnership $100,000 for that parcel. With the addendum, it does make that statement that they would be willing to, upon demolition, transfer the entire piece of property to the city at no cost upon demolition. One caveat to that piece is they would like to parcel of property transferred to them at no cost within Parkway 3 to continue with the housing development. They are looking for a transfer of property that would be equal to the quality and size of the development they're looking at doing from the junior high site. The junior high site is 4.55 acres. Their development was a little over 3 acres. So the housing partnership would be looking for a little over 3 acres within Parkway 3. Parkway 3 is located just right off Leachfield Road, and it'll be the next phase of affordable housing that the EDA would be working towards. So with that first piece, are there any questions or comments on that?
And what's this, run that $100,000 number by me again?
The housing partnership purchased that piece of property for $100,000. And as part of the redevelopment, that is a TIF reimbursable fund that we could pay them. So that was one of the pieces requesting is payment for the property of $100,000 out of our TIF funds as part of the redevelopment and demolition project.
And this agreement is for the entire piece of property?
Yes, sir. 4.55 acres.
Mark, the reimbursement of that purchase cost would be, I know you said it differently, but is that intended to be offset by the acquisition of Southwest Housing Partnership of city property in Parkway 3?
I'm not saying no. It's a,
I think that's something we want to maybe have some discussion with the Southwest Housing Partnership.
Right.
I don't think we want to reimburse them for the cost of purchasing the junior high property, and then also then give them.
and that's why I said no, is because this is a redevelopment site. That redevelopment site gives certain qualifications and credits towards their applications for the housing in order to get grant funds. Parkway 3, and then the cost of donating the property, that also will give them credits towards their application of tax credits. So essentially, the redevelopment site gave them certain credits to get the tax credit. Now, would be the donation of the land would also give them credits. If they would not be able to attain them, it would change the whole scope of the project. That's how it was explained to me by Greg, so I want to make sure I explain it to you thoroughly of why he was making the request for building. To give you an example of the size, Parkway 3 is approximately 18 acres and would be a little over 3. At this point, we don't know where that property, because we haven't laid out the rest of the property for our development, so that's why there's not a specific piece within Parkway 3 being requested. That explain that event, Ron?
It doesn't explain that. I think we're still.
Sure.
Further clarification, the city had the opportunity to go look at that property, buy it 5 years ago or 4 years or whatever it was for $100,000. Now, the party that bought it wants to sell it back to us for $100,000 plus get 3 to 4 acres of land elsewhere. That's a pretty good return on their investment for a rather short period of time. You're smiling, Mark.
Well, I really have no comment, I mean, I guess they purchased it with faith with the project in mind. They've been, working through the whole process, and I think the whole process is, I think it's going through, looking at some changes. I believe they're just trying to accommodate us as much as they can. I really see that the housing is needed, and we really should be looking at the project we brought forward. As far as return on investment, I can't make any comment on that.
I guess I'd have a problem with giving back $100,000 plus land. If I was given $100,000 worth of land in exchange for the $100,000 that for this building, then I wouldn't have a problem. But if I'm given $100,000 cash plus giving them 3 acres of land, which I don't know how you figured out the lots, probably, my guess is you're looking at probably 15 lots or whatever, what that would be worth in investment property. That would be hard for me to swallow. There's one other issue, I guess not on that part, but when we get into the agreement of sale to the developer, I want to discuss something on that part too.
Sure. The part that I brought forward was, I thought the biggest change in the agreement was all the whole transfer of land curve and the caveat of transferring Parkway 3. And then, like I said, also we have to bring this to EDA, because the EDA is the owner of Parkway 3 property. So there's 3 entities that have come together in agreement. So as Bob said, we want to come together with Rick and discuss that with EDA and also with council.
Could you elaborate, Mark, on item A or 6? Or item 1? Aye.
Essentially, what Rick is stating here is that through this transfer, we have a project in mind, and if we're not going to use that, we should let it sit there or not. We would like to have opportunity to purchase that back at fair market value after 5 years of being undeveloped.
Say again the letter.
Is it I, correct?
So what project do you have?
Well, he's saying if we don't choose to do it,
Okay, if the authority agrees in the event that the redevelopment site is not developed for public purpose, meaning public buildings?
well, we just put that in general. Let's say, for example, we didn't want to quarantine ourselves to a certain project. We have the property right now, and we're proposing a potential use for a library. If that does not happen, and we continue to look forward to a potential other public purpose, we could still use that. But to leave the land bare and sit there for 5 years.
Public purpose meaning it could be sold to someone else to bring it back on the tax rolls. That's what I want to make sure that it's not limited to just a public use. Cal Barnett told us prior to that once his site would be leveled, it should bring between $600,000 to $700,000. I've got no problem foregoing some of that purchase price, provided buildings come back and the tax bills. That's what I'm trying to make sure that that's not in here, that it's just for public purpose. Meaning library, I've heard new city hall, I've heard a lot of things.
Yes. I got a question with you too, because if you read that, it says the redevelopment authority has went through this purchase agreement for the sale, transfer, and redevelopment of the property on or before June 1st, when the authority has received the binding agreement by the governing body of the library that are constructing a facility on the redevelopment site. So the purchase could be waived. That's what it is to me. I mean, the purchase could be waived if you're not going to build a library there. And we want that out within the purchase.
Doesn't sound to me like this is. Have you been part of this agreement, Devin?
No.
This is kind of a one-sided deal so far?
Well, I'm just bringing, this is the addendum of the request that was brought to him, and that's why I'm bringing it back to you. That's why we're not looking for approval, to look at discussion, because it's, the contract was approved, so he's bringing back the addendum that you were looking for.
I guess I'd like,
Purposes.
Yep. I guess I'd like to say that I have no problem with them in the building. I have no problem with giving that transfer of land for $100,000 worth of land for the price that they've got stuck into it. I would like to have the land available if we decide that that piece of property could be better used by a developer to put taxable buildings on, some kind of project. I mean, that's a pretty expensive piece of land right next to Main Street like it is in the middle of downtown. That'd be a nice piece of land that a developer could use also. And in that process, we could also recruit somebody that would take tearing the place down, place by selling. So I'd let that option be, not saying we're gonna do that, but I want that to be an option that we could do if we want in the future, not just limit ourselves to one project or to public buildings or anything like that. I'd have a hard time supporting it.
I understand your point.
Charlie's also pointing out, Dennis, was that there's a contradiction between he and I.
Yes.
Where one is talking about a specific project, the other is talking about, public purpose and, something that Dan had said earlier too.
To your point, Charlie, this is where I think where Rick is coming from. Rick is a developer, and he is looking at developing housing and he's foregoing that development to bring about this project. So that's where, that would be coming on the tax rolls, that would be part of the project. So that's where he's coming at. He's foregoing his project so we can do ours. He would look at consideration that we'd be able to get back on that opportunity to purchase it at fair market value. Not to be giving to him, but to purchase the property back at fair market value to his development. That's, in our discussion, that's what we was heading with that.
Okay, other discussion?
I had a question. You said that housing is needed. Now I know the county was going to do a study for housing, right? Has that study been made known? Do we know the results from that study yet?
We have the final draft complete and we made no adjustments to that draft, so a final print is in route. And yes, it did show.
Are we going to see it as a council?
Yes, you will. I didn't want to show you a draft, I wanted to show you a final form and go through all the recommendations and all the statistics from Maxfield research.
You're talking about the city portion of that, the county portion is under Lyon County Enterprise Development, North Johnson's here. What's the status of the county portion?
Actually, that draft is also done in the end. We're reviewing it to, before they do the final, we'll make certain that they've interviewed everybody that we would propose that they would interview to get all the information compiled in one spot. We're in the process of doing that right now. I suspect that it will be a very short period of time when the final is ready to go.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess I would like to see, as I said, I think this is a pretty high rate of return on the 100,000, that we talk about just land for land and we keep cash. Give them 4 acres, 5 acres, whatever land is appraised at per acre in Parkside 3, that we trade them $100,000 worth of land for this land.
I don't think you get there on that. You pay 3,900.
For which one?
Parkway. Keeping property.
Your Honor, if I might.
Yes. I've never been called
Your Honor, members of the City Council, if I might, to just make a recommendation, you're certainly able to continue the discussions as you like, but I think that based on the discussions, I think it's clear that there's some outstanding issues on this negotiation, and I would like to bring this back at a staff level to continue those thoughts from there, rather than continuing the discussions kind of in an open forum. So I think the city attorney's review and the staff review is appropriate at this time before we come back and you have a formal recommendation drafted to bring back to the city council.
Acceptable to the...
Sounds great.
Okay, very good. agenda item number 8 is the introduce traffic jam event community festival. Once again, this is an informational item. And Johnson, Lyon County Enterprise Development Corporation. No.
Just wanted to give you a heads up that there'd be some applications coming in for permitting to continue an event that we had last year during the former Sounds of Summer, which was a championship of garage bands. We have a couple of events during the year. Some are for kids and some are wide open. Last year at the county fair, we had 9 bands battle off. We had from actually Sioux Falls, the Twin Cities, and the Seward came to come to that event. We're having that event again, but we don't have the venue in order to have the championship during the Sounds of Summer. And we have an alternative that will be bringing information. The quick rundown is that we propose to hold the event in the parking lot that sits between the Varsity Pub and the Car Toys building. We wouldn't block off any streets. The stage would be set up against the Car Toys building, facing downtown, and then minus the noise impact on the residential. Speaking with Robbie Ann and Paula Curry, we're taking some of their notes under advisement to make sure that we have the event shut off at midnight. We will anticipate starting about 2 in the afternoon. We allow underage up until only 10 o'clock at night, which I guess is customary for an event like this in town. And after that, it would be age 21 only. And we also have provisions for any food or beverages or alcohol to be served out of the Varsity Pub. So all that licensing is for the most part taken care of, except for the off-site, which will be part of the application we're finishing up with Jane's help. To let you know that that was coming, we anticipate probably 7 bands and then a headliner that will play. Roxbury Drive is under contract to play at the end of the night. The winner of the 7 bands that play in the afternoon will get to open for Roxbury Drive. I want to know if you had any questions or comments about that we could bring back to the planning table. I'll quickly share with you that the group that does this is a volunteer group that we lead out of the development corp. It's called the Garage Band Project. We have Scott Ewing from the college, Van Harris from the Van Sound in downtown. Mark also spends some time with us, as well as a few others.
Glenn, you have a question?
Yeah. Who would the agreement be with? I did talk to Nort earlier about the site and the location. It is city property, the site that they're looking at. I would expect there to be an agreement between the sponsor and the city, someone to take the liability issues as well. It won't be a closure of any public streets or right-of-ways at this site, but it probably does need then an agreement between the sponsoring agency and the city, including the liability issues that we normally have on publicly owned property, but in this case, it's city-owned property.
Sounds good. I just have, wait for the application. I don't know what group you represent or who's going to be hosting it.
It will be the Varsity Pub business or property will be listed on the application.
So they'll be the sponsoring entity, and that will include then the off-site liquor license and an agreement to use the city-owned property.
You're going to bars the alley?
Right.
Yes, now. One question I have is, you said at 10 o'clock, your miners are going to have to leave. What's the plan at 10 o'clock to make sure that
We'll work that through. They do armbanding, and that will happen as they enter from either of the points of entry. One will be at the alley from the outside, and the other point of entry will be at the front door of the pub. And you'll be ID'd and get the liquor band at that time, so if you don't have the liquor band at 10.
How about
and who's
bandy over 21? They'll keep it on. I'm not real sure that the younger one, if you put it on, that band is not going to disappear during the course of the evening. So issue the
the bands would go to the
over 21.
Eligible to drink, yes.
They're certainly going to keep on holding it.
Right. And then we're also, the Marshall PD will be assisting us with security. It sounds, according to Paul, probably 2 officers would be sufficient along with the members of the Garage Band Coalition helping
item. The items that he did bring up tonight were discussed with North and not a part of our current ordinance, but it was the intent of our direction of the 10 o'clock issue, and that's why North's bringing that forward. It might be a good trial run, if in fact it does go forward, because we certainly will get feedback from the Public Safety Division on how this event went, if it's at all. Especially the issue of the 10 o'clock, we talked 10, 10:30 issue. See how it goes if it does go. And the other item is that James just brought up, is does this issue need to be declared a festival for the off-premise liquor license? If it does, is there a hearing for that as well? So, you kind of have to start doing advertisements for these things. And what's anticipated August 23rd? If it's something that we need to get brought forward in a hearing scheduled for a festival for the liquor license issue, needs to be initiated by council as soon as possible.
Kind of somewhat like some.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with that procedure, so somebody else has to help me out with the festival procedure for council action. Because otherwise you won't get it till the second meeting in August, and then you certainly be tough to cancel.
Tom, you have any comments you want to make?
I would prefer to have Jane respond to it. She's the one that's been working with him and.
I included in the packet what the Marshall Code addresses on community festivals, and there is no public hearing required. The council has to declare it a public or a community festival in order for a on-sale liquor establishment to serve liquor off-site. And that's really what they're looking to do, is to have it declared a community festival so that the Varsity Club can serve off-site. And I provided him with the same application that we have used in the past for Sounds of Summer and all the same criteria that has been done for that.
So your intent is to bring this back at the first meeting in August?
Correct. And with the completed application with the safety and security and civil sample proclamation for the community festival.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. Agenda item number 9, consider purchasing body armor for the police department. We do have a memo from Director of Public Safety, Rob Gann, as well as his recommendation. Are you going to speak to that, Steve?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good.
I guess this is something that's been going on throughout the years as far as law enforcement being supplied the vests. In the outline here, Chief Gant and Sergeant Gadd has decided which body armor is best to be replaced. Body armor has to be replaced every 5 years. That's what the warranty is for them. I believe there's a federal grant that reimburses the city for up to half, 50% of what we're spending. And it looks like we're looking at replacing 8, including replacing 4 and then getting 4 for our new officers. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions regarding this.
The recommendation that is being made is for the second of 4 levels. And is that recommendation made because that's what the officers prefer, the fit, the comfort, or is that made because of the cost?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it's the best vest that's going to be functional for the officers when it's really warm out. These things are absolutely leaving no air through. So the lighter you have, and it's able to stop a bullet, and I think they're going with the .357, 40 calibers, the kind of weapons that we're using to be able to stop that threat. So along with functionality, protection, and comfort and price, this is the best one out there that they've researched.
What the point I wanted to make is that we're not compromising officer safety or performance by the cost.
That's not my understanding. I think it's something that everybody will be able to wear, that's comfortable, because if something's not comfortable and on the warm days you're not going to wear it, and well, then it's not going to be any protection to you. So I think it's just that it was just well researched, and that's what they came up with.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Charlie. Discussion. Not all in favor, motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 10 is the information item. This would be from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. With us tonight, we have Tim Flaherty and Chris Hood representing the coalition, and they'll give us their 2008 legislative report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Tim Flaherty, and I'm principal at Flaherty and Hood, and my partner Chris Hood is passing out the session report for the 2008 legislative session. We're now going to be visiting with your new city administrator, and then also to give this report to the council tonight. First, I'll just say a word about the coalition. We now have the highest membership ever. We have 80 member cities in the coalition. A nonpartisan advocacy group. We work in local government aid, transportation, annexation of land use, economic development, and environment. We also have a labor and employee relations committee, and a website is listed on the back. I'm not going to cover everything in this report tonight for you. I will touch on the local government aid and property tax relief issue in more detail than the other programs. Give you a quick view of what happened in 2008 and some of the challenges that we faced along with the state in 2009. First, the LGA property tax 2008 session. We had a goal of increasing funding for local government and improving the local government formula. To take a pot of money at the state, let's say $4 or $5 million, and distribute it to the cities for property tax. And so there's a fairly major dispute about how that money should be distributed, what factors should be based on. So we worked on that. Our message this session was to convey that even in a budget deficit, which the state had, LGA should be increased, and that the state should not shift its fiscal problems onto city property taxpayers. And that message we did sell pretty successfully. We also developed with the other cities in the state what we call the Unity Bill, which follows cities, basically green and blue cities, to changes in the local government formula. So the results were, you see on the front page of the report, the graph on the right-hand side, you can see they did fund another $42 million in local government aid. They also did improve the local government aid formula to bring all the cities in the state to support that formula. The other thing, though, which was not in our policy and our goals, was they also passed levy limits, and I'm sure you'll be dealing with those in budget discussions in the coming weeks. The levy limits were pushed by the governor, and generally they were opposed by the legislature in both parties in the past and even this year. The compromise that the legislature achieved with the governor, we think, is good. It's better than what the governor originally proposed. And so that's really what happened. I want to turn your attention to one of the pages on the inside, the one with the red bar graphs on it. And that shows the LGA history for the city of Marshall. You can see in 2003 it was certified to receive $2,731,396. And you can see where you 2008, which was $2,481,000. And then we show you what would have happened had there been no change in the law this session. In other words, if the $42 million hadn't been put in there and the formula hadn't been changed. You would have actually lost money from 2008. It would have amounted to $2,412,000. And so with the additional money in the new formula, you should receive $2,655,000, or roughly, I think it's a 7% increase from where you were in 2008, and a 10% increase from where you would have been in 2009. So we consider this a successful session. Nobody really believes levy limits are a good policy. We oppose that. The practical matter was we had to adjust to it, we had to compromise. And I think the levy limits will greatly improve from what the governor proposed. As far as the future goes, I think I want to turn your attention to the other page, the other insert in the three graphs at the left-hand side. It's very clear now that the budget deficit for 2010 and 2011, in other words, the next down for the state, is $1 billion. That's well recognized. It's $2 billion if you would include inflation in the budget forecast, but I don't want to get into that right now. But the point is, the state has at least on the books now $1 billion deficit that they're looking forward to. The second graph there shows something somewhat alarming, I think, and that is that the budget reserve for the state is only $500 million. When the Council of Economic Advisors for the state recommends $1.7 billion. They entered the session with $1 billion, and now they're down to $500 million. And so the message I want to leave with you is that even your December payment in 2008 is not really safe. The governor, if the November forecast, the next November forecast is down by more than $500 million, the governor could allot your December payment, this December's payment in LGA. I don't want to scare you, but on the other hand, it is a reality there. And then the other point I would make is that in 2009 you're at risk because of the projected state budget deficit for the next year. So I think in the next session we've got two things to look at. Can we keep the local government aid that we have? And the second point is, can we keep the levy limits from being tightened even further? And I think those will be the two issues. And we do have a program. We will be in Mankato in the end of July here at our summer conference. We do have our tax chairs coming. We also have the legislative leaders coming, including Representative Faber. So we're going to have some discussions with them at that time. We do have a position we're actively preparing for the next session now. Before I move on to local aid for the state budget, are there any questions that anybody would have on that? I'll quickly cover the other subjects because I know they have a
Just a quick question about the conference. The 3-day conference, the registration and including travel at $245. Given that there's a downtime that's incorporated into that, if a person wanted to just attend the portion of the meeting that has meat to the agenda, is there an option of not paying that full $245? You heard the earlier discussion that actually exceeds what the adjustment we've talked about for next year. Anyway, my point is that,
Yes,
the conference is kind of expensive.
Yes, sometimes cities, particularly cities that are close by, like the whole council on or something, or even people that come far away that can only come to like Thursday and Friday, or actually the business meeting is Friday morning, so if you want to come and really have different discussions about assessments and budgets and how we do our business, that's Friday morning. And I think we have we could do like a 1-day, 3 not only the tax chairs and legislative leaders, but we've invited the first congressional district candidates and also the U.S. Senate candidates. And candidate Rankin has accepted a lady here on that, and I think at least a couple from the first district. So if you want to do just a one-day thing, we can accommodate that, yes. And especially for them, if you just want to come home to dinner or really the awards dinner reception is there about 5 o'clock, or somebody just want to come in, that's, basically have to pay for the cost of the meal and sort of along with it. So. Okay, transportation. Our goal was to pass a comprehensive transportation bill because new revenue was needed. And of course, we lobbied very heavily, and of course, we had no override government veto and two here in Minnesota legislators did make these things and vote for it, which was override veto. And that was Representative Hamilton and Worthington, of course, our cities down there were very active and convincing to support that. Representative Hegberg. So we had, which is up around Melrose and some other cities. So we did, I think the coalition did do its part to help get that bill passed. We're not expecting that to be a big issue this next session. There are some issues about allocation of some of the money that might come up, but we don't expect any new big transportation law with that. It did provide a large amount of funding for the state to deal with roads and bridges. Any questions on that before I move on? So we've all heard about it. I'll tell you what it was. Annexation. We have very limited goals this session because there's been a task force set up by the state to debate the annexation issues. That really hasn't gone any place. There were a couple of small technical recommendations that were made, which were adopted by the legislature. Next year, we expect it to be a very major part of the coalition's program, and we expect to get support not just from other cities in the state, but from a lot of the other groups. And one of the new things that has come out on the land use issue is the report of the governor's task force on reducing greenhouse gas gases. And so one of the things the state has adopted a goal to reduce greenhouse gases. And in this report, there is a recommendation that they change land use patterns in the state, and that would help the state meet its greenhouse gas reduction goal by 17%. What that means in practical terms is, I think the state is leaning towards a land use policy that will be much more difficult for urban sprawl to occur, encourage much more dense development so that we reduce the vehicle miles traveled. And this is an issue both in the metropolitan area and in the area of Minnesota. And it has the attention of almost all of the legislators. So this is the year we think is the time to join forces with others and tackle the sprawl issue and try to think we then will apply to large developments outside of cities. The effort would be to have growth in both areas within cities. So that would be a very major issue this next session. Any questions on that? Move on to economic development. Was a bit of a disappointment this year. Our goals were to get state money for investment tax credit, redevelopment grants, and business infrastructure grants, and preserve the Jobs C program for at least in distressed areas. And our message was that Greater Minnesota was lagging behind the metro area and needs economic development. We supported the governor's initiative on economic development. A very comprehensive proposal. We'd like to testify in favor of it, but the facts are that it was just rejected by the legislature. And the legislature really failed to develop its own proposal. So really, we were pretty much faced with the gridlock situation. In your report on the third up on the right-hand side that shows the economic development program, the job city, the infrastructure fund, and redevelopment funding, and you can see what the governor's proposal was, and really what little was passed. Now, having said that, there still is $5.75 million for the Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Bonding Program. It's not 20 recommended, but that money is available. The application process is open, and so it's a competitive grant process for Greater Minnesota cities. And many cities have used it. It's been like putting in infrastructure for business parks and things like that. So it's a good program. Cities have really used it. I think the government saw how good it was and was trying to give it a boost, and we were disappointed with that. Outlook for 2008 and 2009, economic development is not good. It's like I mentioned, the state has a budget deficit, so I think it's not likely to be doing a lot in economic development. In fact, we want to fund the programs that we have. So with that, I would say that's kind of the report of what's happened, what we're doing in the coalition. For those of you that aren't familiar with what we do sponsor candidate forums around the state, and the House is up for election this year. We primarily do those in areas where there's open seats, like Owatonna is an open seat, Vermont is an open seat, Benji is an open seat. And we'll conduct candidate forums in there about city issues, and we find those that get very effective. The other thing we do is we do a candidate survey, which we have here. It looks like this is sent to every candidate for the state house in Greater Minnesota, and many of them, most of them, will sit down with their city and fill these out. And that's very important. So I'm going to do this with the city. In fact, I could pass it off to you guys to just kind of see. They ask questions in economic development, land use, maybe I'll just pass it out. And I'll just close with a couple but really we find that there's nothing better than to sit down before the election with the candidates of both parties, and we really don't know in most cases, except for maybe at their bench, we don't really know who's going to win these races. So it's really good to sit down and explain the programs and have some discussion ahead of time. So I would encourage you to do that through the European piece. Let me just say this. I think, we've had a very successful program. A lot of it is because we get really strong participation from council members, mayors, and city managers from our 80 cities. So if any of you have time to want to participate in any of our committees that we have, the telephone conference, I encourage you to sign up. We are changing our committee structure to make it even more streamlined this year. We don't need to run to St. Paul all the time to have some input. So, and I appreciate Mike has been coming to our conferences and participating. Mayor's on board now. And so really we've been successful because we have such good participation, and continue to have an impact if we do that. I want to thank the city for being a long-standing member of the coalition and for participating over these many years. And I'll stand for any questions if anybody has any more.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Questions?
I don't want to extend any further, but the MPCA phosphorus rule and that program, I know there's a lawsuit going on with the across the board #1 milligram per liter, but on the sharing of the loads, how is that program coming?
I think I might ask Chris, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about that? Chris is our legal person at the office.
It doesn't have to be long, Chris. I know we get updates regularly from Chris. We appreciate that. Shane Waterman is in the audience as well. We get those forwarded to him, and we do read the updates, but.
Are you specifically talking about trading?
Trading. Credits.
I know that there's a rulemaking that's going to be going on related to trading, and I think that the jury is a little bit out still in terms of what that process is going to ultimately look like. I think it will probably, it may or may not involve a trade association. It looks like right now there may be more direct one-on-one trades.
Just so you're aware, this council just approved the phosphorus reduction program for our community before the limits go on. Okay? And we will probably have a significant availability of credits to be sold if in fact that goes forward. And so we'd be interested in that right away.
And we had as part of Messer had a nutrient trading committee that was established at one point, but it sort of phased out in relation to what the MPCA was ultimately doing on trading. So now we're sort of waiting to see kind of in terms of what they develop in the rules.
So you're not actively working on that program?
We're monitoring it, and we're not that involved in it right now.
Thank you.
I think Steve Nias in our office would probably.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're watching it to see if there's any problems, but we've been a big proponent of the trade in the Minnesota River area. We got that started because it really saved people a lot of money, and still at the same rate, better than our so it's a really good program. I'm glad you brought that up. And in terms of the lawsuit, it has been filed, and we're hoping that it's in court of appeal, so and that will probably be heard in a few months. I think it's a really important lawsuit because of the precedent. Really want to make decisions on some kind of scientific evaluation, not just pick up on so that's going on. And
Our limit won't change because of the lawsuit, but
the lawsuit is really over when the
arbitrary setting.
Yeah, arbitrary setting, and then there are certain things that we think should be in the rule that will allow cities when it makes no sense, just a waste of money, that they should be able to appeal and get an exemption from that one. And so that's what we're really fighting over. We think there should be some exemptions because one side is so arbitrary that it really fit everybody. We don't want to waste money.
Thank you, Tim.
But thank you very much for your time this evening.
Agenda item number 11 is Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership Grant Development Agreement. Mark, you're here for this. This is for a application for a small business grant.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you is a grant development agreement with Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership to apply for small business funds with the Department of Economic Development. The pre-application is due in September. The final application is due January 2009. Essentially, they're looking for a retainer fee of $1,500 and a final fee of $6,000. Essentially, we're looking for 30 to 35 applicants to apply for this grant. It would be for rental property and owner-occupied housing only. This small city grant will not include commercial properties. The area essentially is surrounding the downtown area, approximately 4, 5, 6 block radius. The load parameters are already been set and agreed upon by the housing partnership as an open amount of space. At this point, they're looking for the signing of this contract to proceed to complete the application and all the information needed forward in order to make sure on September 8th. The funds, at this point, I have a general fund budget within the EDA administrative
Thank you, Mark. Questions?
Well, it's just a general question. I mean, how big a thing is this grant? In the past, yes, we've had an agreement with, to provide help when we did not have a mediator. How big an application is this thing? I mean, you're providing them with all the information to put in the grant, certainly.
Really, I want to provide those parameters. We could drive around this community and look at where blighted housing may exist, you know, possible opportunities for improvements of infrastructure of the housing. But really, as far as narrative, I honestly, Mike, I would have no idea how to fulfill such a grant.
They also are going to be conducting the interviews in the analysis of each of the properties.
The approximate cost of each unit is about $22,000. If we have approximately 30 to 35 applicants, so it's a $600,000, $700,000 grant application. We don't know what the full scope is going to be until we find out how many applicants are going to be. That's what the difference between the September and January timeframe is you put out the pre-application and you'll find those that are going to apply to the program, and the number of applicants goes to find out.
What kind of matches are those the ones that participate? Is there a match program to it, or is
Is, our previous grant, and I assume it's a similar, it's a third, so the grant would be 1/3 of the total project, 1/3 of it would be grant, 1/3 of it would be low interest loan, 1/3 of the total project would be owner injections.
Essentially, our role is complete once the grant is complete. We're giving them the information and what they're ready because appropriate for the grant. From that point on, once they start the application, they do the rest of the work is to the housing partnerships.
You know, the city's spending the $6,000 for all the enhancements.
Correct. Yeah. And that'd be essentially just the application fee.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
So move, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mark. Agenda item number 12 is the Southview Drive Improvement Project. We have two actions here. Actually, before we get to this one, I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess.
Tremendous amount of research on this. What started out to be, I think, we all believe would be a pretty straightforward appointment, and certainly the company thought so too, but we have learned that much more complicated than what it would be. So the action then is the resolution that would authorize this joint reappointment of members.
And all must be non-elected officials from whatever entity they get nominated or brought forward.
Are there questions about that resolution? If not, is there a motion for that resolution?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Note that this will be entered into the official language of the resolution. Be around for years and years. Discussion on that motion. Not all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Then item number 20 is the Council Commission Board Liaison Reports. Mine have not met since our last meeting. The EDA did meet as a rescheduled meeting on the date of our last meeting earlier that day. Dan reported that at our last meeting. Mike?
Airport Commission did meet. We do not have the minutes yet. Lyon County Enterprise met last Tuesday.
Okay, this time I'll reconvene the meeting. We are on agenda item number 12. This is the Southview Drive Improvement Project. We will, two actions to consider. One is the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment. And then second, the resolution that would call for the hearing on that proposed assessment. What?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the project we're talking about. It's Southview Drive from South 4th Street to Country Club Drive. It's essentially total reconstruction due to the fact that the water main and sewer main needs to be replaced, as well as the water and sewer services to the properties. You can see on 12 on the back of 12-2, the proposed breakdown of those assessments. I will indicate, however, that they may be adjusted at the hearing, subject to input at the hearing from the property owners. We have split the assessments in accordance with our policies for assessment purposes. And another thing to bring to your attention, on the back of 12-1, where we show the cost to be assessed, the number 2, the period of assessment, we're recommending 10 years rather than 8 years. It is a fairly large project. It's total reconstruction, so the assessments are expected to be from $3,500 to $5,200, and we wanted to indicate probably a 10-year payback. Also, the 6.1%, if you remember, the direction from council earlier was that we want to be 2% above the last bond sale. Tom Melbrook is checking what that last bond sale was. Our last projects that we did was 4.1%, plus 2 is 6.1. I would like to say that if you can't find that before your motion, that be included in the motion for the proposed assessment amount for interest rate. And if there's any other comments, this would be the introduction and for the hearing on the assessment.
Okay, questions for Glenn? Not, I'd entertain a motion for the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed, ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment, and calling for the hearing of the assessment. Motion by Charlie, seconded by Larry. Discussion?
And we will make those adjustments prior to the hearing on the rates.
Other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 13, consider the approval of the resolution authorizing the execution of Minnesota Department of Transportation grant agreement for the airport improvement excluding the land acquisition. Look again to that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one again is a little bit different. Councilmember Boddinghamer probably remembers back to phase 1 of the airport expansion project for the main runway. There was some issues that were outstanding during the design and construction of those, 2 of which were the redesign of the apron area that was reconstructed in front of the AD building, as well as the amounts that were to be expended for utility relocations. Not only didn't they know where all of them really were, but how much they would cost to relocate during the construction was also not known. And so at that time, the state and Fed recommended that participation wait until after the work was done, and then they would amend the agreement. In this case, it was not an amendment to the original agreement, but really entered as phase 3, going back and covering the cost for phase 1 and the redevelopment or redesign costs of the ramp. So after that being said, this now is a cleanup grant, as shown, covering the $124,116.37, of which 95% of that is federally participating. Mike, and if you can give any other input or clarification as far as that explanation, That's as close as we can get for an explanation of this grant.
In essence, we've been carrying it on the
Yes.
top, and now we want that money.
Yeah. And it was pre-approved back in phase one grant agreement.
Okay, questions? Now, is there a motion?
I will make a motion that, resolution exercising that grant.
Second. Motion by Mike, seconded by Mike. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 14 is the preliminary plat of the Wiener addition. The action will be the introduction of the plat and calling to the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This preliminary plat, again, a little bit different than what you normally see. Trunk Highway 23 here. This is McFarland addition. There's a lot located right here that they're subdividing for the sale of a portion of the building. This is similar to what we just talked about in that residential conditional use permit that we discussed. In that they're carving off a piece of property that follows the actual wall lines in the building. So they're actually selling off this part of the property, which is part of the building. And so this is the preliminary plat. We're calling for the hearing at our next meeting. Any questions?
Questions? If not, is there a motion for the introduction of the plat and calling for the public hearing? So motion by Larry, second by Mike. Discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Then item number 15 is the ordinance revoking the ordinance that regarding the annexation of the Sunset area property, Tri-State Petroleum area property. And again, was introduced at our last meeting. At the same meeting, we also adopted the ordinance that provided that annexation. This corrects that previous action that the state disallowed. Correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Dennis, any other comment? They're still working on the issues of others with the process we use. I think it's proper, but they've never done it that way before. This was the most expedient way to get this done. So
By resolution instead of by ordinance.
yeah, we would recommend approval of this ordinance revoking the ordinance.
Question for Dennis or Glenn? Okay. If not, is there a motion? Motion by Dan, second by Mike. Discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 16 is the project Y02. This is the runway extension project phase 2. The action will be acknowledgement of the final payment application to McLaughlin and Schultz Incorporated. We have that information before us. Glenn, anything to add?
No, we'd recommend final payment for the project. And so within the contract amount, even the original contract amount prior to the change order. So, good project. I did check with Dean Coogan at the airport. There are no outstanding issues as far as he's aware of either on the project.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Charlie, second by Larry. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Agenda item number 17, consider appointments to boards and commissions. Earlier this evening, the council met, interviewed candidates for the Cable Commission and the Planning Commission. And based on those interviews, I'm recommending that Kevin Relling be appointed to an unexpired term that would expire May 21st, 2010 on the Planning Commission, or excuse me, on the Cable Commission, and that Neil Lynchide be appointed to an unexpired term on the Planning Commission that would expire May 31st, 2010. And I'd offer that as a recommendation to the council and entertain a motion to confirm.
So moved.
Motion by Larry, second by Charlie. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. That does, there is one unexpired term, or one term remaining open on the Cable Commission. Agenda item number 18, our Councilmember Commission Board Liaison reports. Start EDA, that's not met since our last meeting. The Fire Relief Association did have their quarterly meeting. At that quarterly meeting, they adopt their schedule as that they follow that would calculate the 2009 contribution from the city and town. I believe we have that number, but it's approximately just over $60,000 is what our contribution will.
It's up about $38,000 over the 2008 allocation.
So there will be a substantial increase in what our participation would need to be. However, that is really governed by that schedule, and the major influences of that schedule would be either the number of retirements that are on there, but a larger impact would be on the performance of the pension fund. And of course, the pension fund is in a low rate environment, so I think that's a great thing. Okay, Mike?
The mayor met last Thursday and I was out of town, and they said we need to schedule that Ways and Means in Illinois at the end of the meeting.
Larry?
Planning Commission met and we did have a forum this time. We acted on part of that tonight. The other thing was a tower over by Bournemouth in our own district that was denied. Community Services or Adult Community Center met. Barb is going over the budget. She's looking at what LLS is going to do as far as meal prep, et cetera. Have that together by
Thank you, Larry. Jenny?
The library board met last Monday, a week ago, and about various things from preliminary budget discussion to survey results that we had taken on our new city administrator, who's in attendance. They are requesting a joint meeting again with council, school board members, and library board concerning the location of the library. Mr. Mayor, when you met with the library building committee, you started that discussion by talking about the various groups that initially met in that meeting that they're requesting to have again, and that these folks were supposed to go back to their different groups to discuss the expansion of Tiger Lake, the location of the library, but yet we as a council have not had this discussion. And so I don't know if it's something we need to put on the agenda and discuss. You know, that study that we budgeted for last year, we haven't discussed that. And just different options for the library and the expansion of Tiger Lake.
And the stormwater additional study work that was presented on June 11th. And that was, June 11th was the joint meeting with the council, was invited to the school board and the council and the library board. And then following that, the additional work. Think of, how's that, what's the timing of that?
They've essentially got the revisions made according to the direction that was given them that night, that being that the regional pond concept on the northeast, I call it the northeast, the area of the school property towards High Reef would not be available for that regional ponding, and that was a site that was dedicated for future school expansion. They were considering the location that the proposed library site was, as well as a relocated site of part of the regional pond to the location where the current track is. Well, that discussion then was brought back to the facilities group, and they discussed that somewhat, and they wanted some discussion as to what the feasibility of part of that ponding was at the site of the existing track. That is being put together in the final report by Bolton May. It can't be complete until they get some cost estimates of the existing value of that track. They wouldn't be expected to, for instance, the city wouldn't be expected to replace that with a brand new track somewhere else. There would be a value assigned to that. So that is coming from, I did talk to Community Services about those values. They'll work with the school district on establishing what that might be, and that will be included in the report. We want to have not only the estimate of locations for these things, but also an idea of what each of these facilities are going to cost. We also worked with MMU to establish the fact that the two power poles immediately on the northeast side of Tiger Lake may be eliminated and either span the way they are, or not too significant an expense to make those poles on each side, enable Tiger Lake to be expanded to its ultimate size at that site. If you remember, the proposal showed that roadway with those poles running through there, which significantly reduced the available ponding on the northeast side of Tiger Lake. That is also then being incorporated into their final report. I would say that the final report, less those dollar amounts, will be available next week. If we can get them that information this week, they will have it complete next week. So I'm saying that if you want to schedule a meeting anytime after next week, or even as soon as I get the information, when that's ready, I'll give that to you. So a meeting can be scheduled, sooner the better. As far as, I think every entity, the library was looking for one. I think the school now is ready to make some discussions as well. So within a week.
Yes. On that property, when you're saying going back, past the power poles, there, some of that property is just non-that the city doesn't own, could be very available for sale, I believe.
We have not looked at acquiring more property northeast of that site towards Main Street. That's certainly, you look at what we're going to propose and what the cost is, and then if we have some alternatives for actual construction or buyouts or adjusting that to adjust some water retention or treatment, that would be kind of in the project development phase. This is the concept and engineers' estimates to get done primarily the 1% flooding event. That was the key. And then as much as practicable to the treatment of the water. That was a secondary issue. And we believe that working with the school district, we can get that with the project that's been proposed. Not that there aren't alternative sites at a different cost.
So what I propose is that, the June 11th meeting was really driven, the purpose of that meeting was to discuss that flood control as well as the MS4 requirements for the stormwater issue. And then because that certainly impacted others, that's why the others were invited. Given that now there's been some additional work and refinement of that report, and we all had that report in your June 16th, that was presented on June 11th in your June 16th council packet. But that additional work that was done, it would make sense to, or when that is available, then to schedule that joint meeting. council, so that we have that information and the understanding of that information in terms of what we need to do for flood control as well as stormwater management in that area. And that we have that with so the council has that information, is comfortable with that information. And then the second part of that meeting, perhaps we have that, the discussion with the other entities that are, there are clearly stakeholders in this, be it the library board or the school district, some of their property, as well as the county board, because the county board would be the drainage authority. Whether or not those groups, designate or delegate a subcommittee of their groups, such as they have, like a building committee or a facilities committee, to meet, or whether they all want to, that would be the choice of the group. Does that make sense?
And I'm thinking probably the week after next would be the earliest reasonable time to call that group back together again.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
One procedural question. I'll be helping to coordinate this meeting, I'm sure, with Mr. Olson. And one question on that direction is the presentation on the report when you suggested the council. Are you suggesting that the council meet by themselves first to review the report, or are you just suggesting that that be the first agenda item as the presentation?
Well, I'm suggesting that it would be a two-part agenda meeting, and that the other groups would certainly, as an open meeting, the other groups would certainly be, available to attend, but it'd be primarily for the council. But that's, and then, so say you start your meeting at 5:30. We know on the agenda from 5:30 to 6:30, pick your time, that's going to be the presentation. From 6:30 to, after that time will be the discussion with the other entities. At least that's what I'm thinking. Does that make sense? So if we were looking at the last week of July, like 29th is Tuesday, 29th, 30th, 31st, and
the other thing we can do too is, I think we'll have our administrative assistant, Kathy, can help check the schedules of the council members to make sure that we've got good attendance, and also coordinating that with the completion of the study. Since it's tentative right now anyway, maybe we'll.
And if it's available earlier, would Wednesday, Thursday of next week be available?
Well, the coalition thing starts on the 30th, Wednesday the 30th.
So the 29th might be a date? Is that Tuesday?
Yes.
I think that's a good suggestion, Ben, that work with Kathy on checking possible times, and certainly council can give their input, and then.
And if we have the information early, I see no reason not to share that with all the other entities. If that's all right with you? Or would you like to see it first?
If it's available, I think we can.
It would just be an update to the last draft.
So then, at what point do we explore more, like Charlie was talking about, more property in that watershed, so that we don't have to move the library off the C Street location?
I think that would be the time. I mean, it's going to be cost versus value for you. And that would be their primary site, and we have other alternatives. I think that between now and then, if you do some door knocking and discussions, you might find out what's available. I don't think we were looking at a dollar value for the site where the library was, but I know that there's a dollar value for the alternative pond and treatment facility where the track is. I know that there would be a cost there.
But in one way, there is a dollar value when you talk about relocating that library up here, so.
Absolutely.
Even though it's free property, taking a piece of property that we got for free, and
place in the
That
city.
comes back to last time,
Absolutely.
item 6 on keeping that
Yep.
property.
Available.
No, that's a tax.
Available.
Because I was told at this, and I wasn't there, I was told that at this June 11th meeting, someone on this council made that statement that if the library went away from the C Street piece, and went over to the middle school property, we could issue public bonds and we wouldn't have to vote on it, they'd be tied together.
I think, Dan, that's a,
That's what I
of
was
course,
told.
I'm the only one that was there, so, but I think that's a leap as far as, I'm not sure who told me that, but that's a leap as far as what the discussion was that evening.
I brought that up.
Jenny, is that, or on your agenda item, is that? Okay, Mike?
Hospital board met this evening. I had to leave early. And they did have a presentation from the Minnesota Commissioner of Department of Human Services, Cal Rudeman. He basically gave a presentation on the priorities for the Department of Human Resources, and that was based on the 2008 legislation and CMS limitations for Medicare. So he was talking about the restraints that are really going to be having to work around as far as providing quality health care in Minnesota. One of the things coming up tonight that I didn't get to stay for was discussion on the privatization timeline and requirements, so I'll give you more information on it at our next meeting, because they'll probably have their first meeting by then anyway, for me to give you an update on it.
Ken?
I had housing commission, was just
And Charlie? And item number 19, staff report, Ben.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. Just a few updates for you this evening. One is you have a handout for a tentative budget timeline. I can use this as a working document, it'll be adjusted, but it provides some statutory deadlines that we're working under, as well as tentative work sessions related to that. I did try and get a little feedback internally to find out what's been done historically. And some of these scheduling issues are up for discussion if you'd like to, but just for purposes of getting on paper, some of the items you'll notice are scheduling from the time when we get ready, which will be on the 25th, kind of being the initial kickoff for the review, formally in a public setting with the council. For the preliminary budgets would be the primary work sessions and scheduling out of regular council meeting times and trying to schedule it on alternating Mondays for consistency purposes. Some of this as we go along, I think we'll find out whether we need all of them or not. So you're going to be kind of packed on here. You'll notice, well, we might have to meet every single Monday. Well, not necessarily, depending on how things go, but I wanted to at least let you know, for your personal calendar and things to get a general idea when we can be meeting. We are moving along with budgetary reviews formally with the city right now. Doing some things like getting the budget worksheet requests out that the department has. You'll see some of the timelines on there for that. We are also continuing to work on, the finance has a substantial amount of assistance that they provide related to things like evaluation of energy cost projections that are consistent across the board, whether that's utilities, heat, natural gas, motor fuel, obviously are going to be big ones, but also just kind of taking a comprehensive look also at projecting personnel cost adjustments, assuming no changes, even the automatic increases that we're going to face without even getting into other spending decisions about increasing or changing services to the public. But this should give you a little bit of an idea of what to look for, and as far as scheduling goes, you will note some people have asked what does CA stand for. That's city administrator, just an abbreviation there that some direction. And there's a lot more detail that goes on behind the scenes, but these are just kind of some key deadlines that we're working under. Some of the things that you'll see changing, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think there's been a lot of financial reporting to the council as far as updates. I think one thing you will be seeing for internal control purposes is quarterly financial reports of some kind. I don't know that we have a determination of exactly what those formats will be, but I'll be working with finance and evaluating what would be most useful for the council for those reviews as another set of eyes to look at budget to actuals, particularly for the year, to see if we're coming in where we're expected. Looking government aid restrictions as well, local government aid should be coming in soon to verify our certifications there. Levy limit restrictions we're reviewing internally and don't have anything specific to comment on that yet. There are some exceptions to the levy limits that do provide some flexibility there. Capital planning and projects will be one thing that will obviously be a major part of the budget review. I think from the standpoint of long-term planning, I think there's room for improvement, which everybody recognizes the value to establishing more of a long-term plan related to capital equipment purchases or replacement scheduling. However, based on the time of the year we're at, I would anticipate that we'd mainly be looking to probably look a little shorter term for 2009 for this fall's perspective. But then right after that period, particularly with the major election coming up, that could potentially change things. Looking at setting goals and vision in the beginning of the year with the goal to move right into long-term planning after that. At least at this point, that's kind of my plan. Also taking a look at evaluating a long-term financial plan as a goal for 2009 to at least begin this discussion of looking out where the city's growth is going from a tax-based standpoint and a number of other things. And I won't get into exactly what a long-term plan entails, but that's one thing coming down in the future. Again, the first review will be on August 25th. If you have any, I'm continuing to meet with all of you individually or trying to schedule meetings. If there's anything that you would like to discuss, either changes or items that you would like for particular review with the budget process, I'm more than open to it. But what I'll be doing primarily is kind of evaluating what's been done in the past and then making my own decisions about whether that ought to be evaluated or tweaked for this year going forward. But we are on a fairly tight timeline, as you can see, moving forward to get things ready for final approvals in early December, late November. So that's a budgetary update for you. Anything specific on the budget before I move on to a couple other updates? A couple other major items that I've identified as a priority are the evaluating some organizational management issues. General Services Department, as you know, has been without a director. One thing to note, if you're not aware, we did have a start date that was tentatively scheduled for today for a new assessor out of another county in Chippewa County. She has renegotiated that contract with them and has accepted the position with Chippewa County and will not be coming to work for the city of Marshall. Therefore, it lends itself to, I'm currently and have been evaluating, particularly last week, that organizational issue that we're dealing with, and I think there's certainly a value to that there's a lot of work time that's needed for a commercial industrial appraiser outside of even the general services responsibility. It's another topic. And beyond that, I would say that I think it's starting to get some definition and at the earliest or at the latest next council meeting, if there's direction needed from the council, we provide it at that time so that we can move forward. The good news on the interim period is that I did have had discussions with assessing on the as far as the operational impacts, since there has been significant delays. And the good news is it's probably a time of the year from an assessing standpoint that probably is better that if we make a decision to move quickly, if we can get somebody else hired in 3 months, we're still going to be sitting pretty well. And in fact, it might be a better time to try and recruit somebody based on the timing that we're at versus where we were at before. I think in general, well, I'll be providing more direction. I guess I don't want to comment too specifically about that this time, but I have talked internally with our own organization, and we continue to provide services and not have any major issues as far as getting ready for hearings and things. Kind of happen after the first of the year. That's when potentially some operational impacts could occur. Is if it's still vacant in February or something, we need to give a new person some time. But it's unfortunate, but I think we'll deal with it, and we are working diligently to try and address that issue. And again, I'm kind of walking into it in the middle of this process, or it was the end. We had hoped at the time. So if there's any particular questions that you wanted to talk about tonight, otherwise that's where we're headed with it. Okay, the couple other minor issues, the labor relations. We We had previously worked with Contractor Services, my understanding is Cy Smythe with Labor Relations, and as you might know, he's pretty well going into retirement. We have an open union contract and open union contracts, a current one that's open for 2008 with one of the police unions. And then coming up for 09, my understanding is we have the remaining labor contracts open. So along with the budget, another priority I'm assuming is going to be labor relations contract negotiations, which I have not had a chance to spend a lot of time evaluating how the negotiations will occur. But I also be forming a recommendation on that. One of the things is I do believe that there is a role for consultants on a limited hourly basis for some specific feedback or consulting services related to whether it's labor relations or time to time when a major law issue comes up related to employees that might be beyond staff's either capacity or working with the city attorney. We want some other feedback on what other communities do. I do think there's a role for that type of a service and obviously keeping control of those costs. But I believe that because of the situation with Mr. Smythe, I think that it would be a good time for evaluating a process to do some type of a request for proposals or qualifications from firms to come in and meet with the council. Part of it with those types of services are, it's number one, cost, expertise, and then just kind of a fit with the community too, and finding somebody the council's comfortable working with and administration's comfortable working with, because hopefully it's more than just a short-term arrangement, more of a long-term kind of commitment and relationship that's built there. So that'll be another item I'll be trying to evaluate, because it will be a priority to try and deal with these labor relation issues sooner than later along here this fall, so I anticipate that happening, particularly for the contract that's open. We do have a meeting scheduled, negotiations meeting scheduled to basically hear the proposal for the police contract that's open. Just a couple other minor items. You will see some changes on the, probably coming up, and you might have noticed them on the agendas, nothing substantial, but minor things. And administratively, I think staff might see some small implementation changes. The memos will be having fiscal impacts on all of them now related to any proposals by staff, something minor. We might be going to an agenda memo format, which provides some summary pages on behind the main agenda item that goes through kind of recommendations on throughout each item listed, so you kind of have a big picture perspective throughout the agenda on what to expect. One other thing, speaking of the coalition being here tonight, I am attending that meeting. Some of the scheduling was set up before I was even here, so I kind of said, whatever the city's typically done with that conference, if you send somebody, sign me up. If not, I'll stay back. And so they decided to sign me up, which I think is fine. And it is, there is a commitment by doing a 3-day period, and it's in Mankato, so it works out well. The first night I'm actually going to be driving back to where I own a home still in Blue Earth, which isn't too far away, and I won't be charging you mileage since it's close to home. But one evening I'll be able to spend there, and then I will also take advantage of it as an opportunity to network and get my face out there to at least meet people, so there's a value there, I think, too. And if we're going to be looking at being a regional center, I think there is a positive thing about being involved from leadership role and as far as policy formulation and those kinds of things. But it's been a long meeting, so I won't go on too much with administrative reports. My full schedule is available to any of you if you'd like to see who I've been meeting with. I'll try and keep you updated. Kathy's been doing a great job on getting me, first of all, internally meeting with people and finding out how things have been done, and I've kind of moved on beyond that as well. There'll be more reevaluation of those things, but also I started getting out into the public with key partners in the community to try and meet those people as well. So if you want to look at the list or see who else I maybe should be meeting with, who are players in the community and partners we should be involved with, certainly you're welcome to that. However, there are priorities. Administrative work that needs to start getting done too. So I'm moving into some of those things I talked about, budget and some of those other ones this evening as well. So with that, I just wanted to give you a report. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Okay. If not, we'll move on to agenda item number 20, councilmember individual items. Jenny? Larry?
I only have some for the August 4th meeting.
Okay. Charlie? Dan? Mike?
Yes, tonight with this new development, with this housing, we've got that neat little phrase in there that is never, ever, ever been enforced within the city limits of Marshall, and that's 3 or more unrelated parties. There isn't a person in this room that can't drive around town until you point out a home in a residential area with more than 3 unrelated parties are living. Now, I understand the difficulty in trying to enforce that, because there's 4 cars there, someone walks up to the door, rings the doorbell. Well, no, Cousin Joe was just visiting here for a week. But I can drive to certain areas. I know one spot for 2 years, there were 6 cars parked in front of that place all the time in a residential neighborhood, and no one here ever saw it at City Hall. It never happened. Well, I could drive by there once a week, and I'd find 5 or 6 cars sitting there in the evening.
Michael, that's 3 couples each with a driver's license.
So, we're putting that in our new one again, you know. Why put it in there if we're not gonna enforce it in some way, shape, or form? And I realize it's not easy to enforce. But why put it in there then?
Because it gives you something to go back to when there's a complaint. And generally, you're not gonna go, just like in my neighborhood, I just put a shed in my yard, and I called up and asked what the zoning regulations is, and I can tell you that there's people that don't meet zoning regulations in my neighborhood according to their sheds. But until there's a complaint that comes forward, you know, the city's not gonna drive around looking for a violation, that APR is not going to do already with that. But if you do, you know, someone does call up and does give them information about something like that, he does check it out.
Well, I don't think you
Try to
can.
enforce it.
I agree, you do not need to drive around looking for it, but if you stumble and you fall flat on your face in front of the place 3 times in a week, or a month, there should be something carried out.
I think what you're saying is that if there's a known violation of their rental codes or codes that are applicable to rental, not only a number of people, but I suppose also for condition of the facility, that needs to be reported to building official.
And send me a CC.
Yeah, and then there'd be.
Maybe what
okay,
Dennis
that
as
would be
well,
all.
because Dennis gets involved with this as well.
Well, just so we remember that, if we're gonna keep putting it in,
Send the idea.
that's it.
One other thing, just as a follow-up, and again, I might have misunderstood you before, but as far as the discussion about financing, I did have a discussion based on, Jenny, your request from the library board with the county and Springstead, Terry Heaton, because that's the same financial consultant. The request was what financing options are available to the library board, recognizing that they have about a $2 million shortfall. And one of the options that Terry Heaton did lay out was many options. One of the options was a multi-year bond based on a comprehensive improvement project or projects that are identified. The request that I asked for more of a what if for information purposes, what would the debt obligation or the payment obligation be on that type of an issuance? Now, Terry has not gotten that back with city staff to that, to my knowledge. So, what the request really was, knowing that we have $1 million commitment, and knowing that they are short $2 million, we're really talking about $3 million. So I asked, well, what if we backed away from our $1 million over the course of the next 3 years, and really talk about $3 million over 12 years? What does that mean? You know, what is the debt, the annual payment on that? And that's mainly for information purposes. Then Jenny, we talked about that at our joint meeting.
That could still happen even if it's stayed on the C Street property.
Oh, absolutely. This request actually came, you know, I mean, it was
referendum was.
Right.
Once we did that $1 million land night rental, that exceeded $1 million, and it come to a referendum.
But the answer would really be the same. And what would it cost? What would the annual cost for a referendum or whatever? And that's what you had asked me to do.
You and Mark have now met
With Terry Heaton and Kathleen Nash was there, as well as John Rhodes was at that time. And I want to say that was
in March,
no.
when I requested that.
Yeah, but by the time we actually got together, it was like April or May. But anyway, still don't have that Terry, I think.
And we did meet with her last week, and she gave us some preliminary information on that, but I think that for purposes of understanding it, I think there needed to be a little bit more detail provided. And so she did make some progress, and we requested some other things from her too, and so I'm anticipating we should be getting a summary of that fairly soon.
Okay, anything else to come forward from the council?
Just one comment from Crazy Days. There was a request for increased safety at next year's Crazy Days, that we close the 4th Street intersection as well, because a lot of foot traffic was going through that intersection. I don't see any reason why not. I would just like to see maybe more activity. Maybe the chamber could sponsor some kiddie parades or kiddie events, tilt-a-whirls, or I don't know, downtown that would justify closing another street. So I think it's something we should look at for next year, the closure from College Drive all the way to 5th. That's all.
Shane, do you have anything? Tom? No. Dennis? And anything more? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second.